Hi, everyone. So the residential student program is a program where young people can take 6 months to a year to fully immerse themselves in Krishnamurti's teachings and live here on the property. And we have a couple comments and readings that the current residential students that we have right now are going to read, and we're going to first hear from Jay.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Jay, and my journey to the residential student program at KFA goes back a while. When I was 13 and 14, I learned psychology at school with a great teacher. He taught me about conditioning and about owning my own stuff. I could talk about anything, and we'd look at it together. He lived in Oceanside, and he used to travel to Ojai to hear Krishnamurti speak. He and Kay had a conversation once. So in that way, I was getting Krishnamurti when I was young. Later on in my life, the work of Byron Katie found me. I traveled to Ojai for Byron Katie events, and I was so lucky to begin my journey of self-inquiry. While I was in Ojai, I visited the Pepper Tree Retreat and the Krishnamurti Library, and that's when I first learned of the residential student program. And then Corona came in 2020. I spent the year exploring outdoors and listening to Krishnamurti podcasts and talks, and I tuned into Kay's energy with close attention. Krishnamurti was an investigative journalist of the self. He was fearless. He would ask any question and fearlessly welcome the answer to come. He was put in charge of a large religious organization, and he dissolved it. The integrity in that rings today. I grew up with religion, which was very controlling in my life. When I was young, I didn't know how to question it or to pay attention to my feelings. I study Krishnamurti so I can dissolve that conditioning and see who I am without any conditioning. Krishnamurti taught me that man created God in their image, that God is built of thought, and God is total disorder. God is simply what people want to be. I'm interested in learning more of the architecture of the mind. Krishnamurti teaches me what all human minds have in common, and this saves me a lot of time in my own inquiry. I comb through his recordings, picking up ways to be better and faster at self-inquiry. I'm an emotional person, and I love what Kay says about observing emotions without the movement of will or searching or time. I always moved away from emotions I didn't like. I didn't know to purely observe them in first generation. Krishnamurti teaches me to watch them like a precious jewel, to read the story of the hurt, and grow by love instead of hardness. I learned from Krishnamurti to pay closer attention to specifically fear and desire, and that in paying closer attention to them, I would be free from their influence. I was accepted into the residential student program in March. The KFA is a stunningly beautiful place, and there is a wealth of Krishnamurti recordings here. In the short time I've been in the program so far, I've been boosting my self-inquiry practice and applying Kay's teachings. And I've learned a lot about Krishnamurti's life and travels. I'm using this program here to absorb teachings, inquire into the self, and dissolve conditioning, so conditioning doesn't run my life. This is a self-guided program requiring self-motivation. It's a transformational research project for those who want it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to study Kay's message seriously here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. That's really wonderful. I had seen other versions of this text, and hearing you read is really, it sounds really authentic and heartfelt, and describes your journey in such a beautiful way, heartfelt way. So I'm really touched and moved hearing that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm. Mm. I have quite a few questions, but maybe one of you want to give your first response, maybe. Mm.
You know, I had one, but it's just left my mind.
Yeah, I have many, but I thought maybe Vincent first.
Question for Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How inquiry is how the process of inquiry is there for you now with both Krishnamurti and Byron Katie. Like how does bring like this powerful inquiry, but with two people who talk about it very deeply. Is that, if you're able to answer, I don't know if it's possible.
I think the two teachers complement each other very deeply, and the goal of self-inquiry is the same. And I learn from each of them and take the best of what they have to offer and combine the parts that help me the most. And I come out with this self-inquiry process that is kind of my own. And I learned so much that there's no technique at some point. But I find the two of them to be very harmonious and complementary.
Thanks for sharing.
I just remembered mine, actually. Jay, I'm wondering what your thoughts about the program being self-guided are.
Yeah. I'm a very self-motivated person and very interested in what Krishnamurti had to say, and that really supports me while I'm here. There's all this material and books and this whole library full of material, and my motivation carries me through to keep reading and searching, and it's very self-guided. There's no structured retreat program from the organization. It's so that leaves room for synchronicity and sort of magic. And yeah, I had a really strong motivation and a momentum that was built up before I came, especially during quarantine over the past year. I was spending time alone and researching and learning and practicing. So this is like a continuation of that. And yeah, this is a very self-guided research program. And it works if you work it.
I have a few things that stand out, and the first thing is the quote that you gave of Krishnamurti, that we create God in our image, right? We believe that we are created in God's image, but it just takes a little bit of time, and then you realize that actually the other way around, right? I mean, God is a human with a human will and a human like and dislike, and the God that we create is completely like an old judge or something, right? An old grumpy judge for some, and maybe for others, maybe a little bit less. And you're saying, okay, and I get that, right? Especially hearing your background, which is very strict religious, right?
Yes.
And then to let that go, that must be really scary. I can imagine, especially when you, from a young age upwards, And at the age of 13, you started to put the first questions there. So that's a very deep, a deep forming. So even daring to think that thought must have been a scary thing to do, right? To dare to think that God might, the God in your head might be created by thought. So how was that when you started? How did you dare question that? Yeah.
Well, to be totally honest,
Yeah.
when I was growing up, I wasn't a believer.
Ah.
I never reified the personality above the clouds.
Mm.
It was something that the community was doing. So
Yeah.
when I found Krishnamurti, it was like he was saying the things that I could never say. And it was so freeing that he could put all these feelings, because I had to keep them secret. I had to be a believer. But to hear Kay put it to words, how what now seems so obvious was so freeing. And so when I first hear it, it's like there's some fear, and I feel like I have to get close to Kay to feel safe. And then I get a little more confidence, and it's like, yeah, I can come out of that.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I think even Krishnamurti points it out that you cannot learn anything from him, but that he formalizes or verbalizes something that's maybe already inside you, right? Yeah. And it's more a question of resonating or suddenly having words for something that you're having a sense of, than that he points out something and you see something new and then suddenly you realize something new. That is it's a really nice way how you formulate that. But then it to me, and I have many questions, so you just have to intervene when I talk too much, right? But then it still begs the question, okay, there is the God image which we have created. Each one of us created, or as a society, or as a belief, we create that. But is there for you something? Is there something sacred? Is there a sense of something that maybe doesn't have a particular form, but is there something for you that's beyond thought? Let me put it that way. I would like, however you want to respond to that, yeah.
Yes, like it's like we're light bulbs discussing electricity. I think there is a beyond and a goodness. And I'm really, one of my passions is to just look out into space and all the stars and the planets and the great distance. And there's I'm part of something bigger than myself. And it feels really good, and I don't need to give it a mind or anything. I just sort of trust it.
So good. I can resonate with that. Then, I mean, a big part of your paper is about inquiry, right? And guided inquiry, and you read Krishnamurti to learn something. And when I was hearing it, I thought, oh yes, I'm curious. And you don't have to answer, but that's a question that comes up for me. It's like, do you put a lot of pressure on yourself by like you have to solve something? I'm going to go through it in order to, is there an element of, is it does it have space, or or is there a lot of, do you feel you have to sort something, and if you don't, it's going to be bad, something like that? Or is it, you're just walking and learning?
I think in the beginning I had some of that motivation, and the more I practiced inquiry, it's like it feels so good. It's almost addictive. And is it something that I have to figure out? No, it's just the benefits of doing it are so freeing. And I do it every morning. I wake up early and do it for at least an hour in the morning. And just the act of journaling out, getting the mind out onto the paper, causing realizations, things that seem obvious, but I wasn't getting. And the act of knowing myself better and watching my reactions, and it feels so natural and free at the end of it that I look forward to it. And I don't know anymore what I'm going to get at the end of it. I thought like I knew enlightenment or what was at the end. But I don't know. I think it's just that feeling of freedom now, and like paradise in freedom, open-heartedness and lovingness. And that's what keeps me coming back to it.
Yeah, my question is anchored somehow in the question of if you like each of us is conditioned, and each of us have our peculiar conditioning, right? A particular things that we act out, that we accept, we have accepted certain things to be true, but we don't know it, but we are doing it. You know what I mean? And it's very difficult to, it's almost like so. So how do you come up on that? I mean, it appears to me, and that's why I'm probing a bit. It appears to me that if I give too much direction in my search, then I might miss something. You know what I mean? Because if there's direction to my search, I'm looking in particular in a particular viewpoint, right? And somehow to see what I don't know, which is driving me, but I don't know how it's driving me. That somehow somehow all direction has to be lost. You know what I mean? I mean, if there's a particular if there's a direction and a motive, then it means it excludes something else. So in order to get the full picture, one somehow has to lose on its way all direction. I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm saying. You know, if I want to find what shapes me, or what has shaped me and what drives me, but I don't know what it is, I somehow have to allow myself not to look in any particular direction in order for that to reveal itself. Because you know what I mean? So I don't know, how do you respond to that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really similar to the way my life is now with the practice of doing self-inquiry, is that my conditioning reveals itself and it makes itself known and it pops into the forefront. There'll be a judgment or a discomfort or a fear. And now my job is to catch it and write it down and then investigate. And that's when what's in the background comes into the foreground and the realization.
Good. Thank you for...
Do you have a question from the audience? Yeah. Not necessarily just towards Jay, but I guess everyone. Kay sometimes talked about intelligence. Was he referring to something spiritual, God perhaps?
I know Krishnamurti said that intelligence is separate from thought. And I would put God in the thought column.
Good.
All right, I have another comment from the audience, if that's okay. This person says, Jay, thank you for sharing. Can you tell us more about your process of journaling?
Sure. So I like to do it in the morning when I wake up, when my mind is peaceful. And what I'll do is the work of Byron Katie, which is a series of questions that are like prompts. So I'll have something that's troubling or a judgment or a fear, and then I'll ask questions about it to see my reactions and to see what it reminds me of, what it's connected to. I'll do a thorough investigation on whatever is the issue. And a lot comes into the light of awareness that I wasn't necessarily realizing. Like, for example, it could connect to the past, or I could see how I treat myself when I'm afraid. And the deeper I investigate into it, just it lets me go. Like, I hear people say they want to let go of their thoughts, but I think it works the opposite way, where when you look closer at your thoughts, they let you go. And that's my goal of journaling, is to get the mind on paper, and like, so my ego can't trick me or have me forget about certain things. I can have it all like on a piece of paper in front of me, like a mirror. And then I can see what I've written. And this is my own ego. And yeah, it's freeing.
Well, I think this might be a good time for Vincent to read his paper.
Yeah. So I wrote on meditation, and I did a mindfulness teacher training at UCLA. So we asked me, what do you see of meditation in the mindfulness movement and on K? So the transition will make more sense now. So my name is Vincent Hernandez. I am 23 years old and originally from France. I have been a residential student at the Krishnamurti Center in Ojai for 5 months. I discovered spirituality at the age of 19 after reading Eckhart Tolle's books, The Power of Now and A New Earth. Then, through Eckhart's recommended book list, I read Freedom from the Known by Krishnamurti, Be As You Are by Ramana Maharshi, I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj, and the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I then explored Buddhism and the Dzogchen teachings. During that time, I became more and more interested in formal meditation, mindfulness, and living the non-duality teachings. There are many mindfulness definitions. The UCLA definition is paying attention to present moment experiences with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. This definition is fairly related to what Kay is pointing towards. Mindfulness puts the emphasis on the help of an anchor, like the breath, sounds, or body sensations, in order to stabilize the mind. Later on, the notion of natural awareness, or presence without an anchor, is introduced, which is closer to what Kay is pointing towards. However, Kay's teachings are more challenging than mindfulness, as he does not give any specific practice. He even points toward the limit of practice, as it can imply a sort of doing that is fragmentary. Kay points toward an attention in which the attender is not. The observer is the observed, is the insight that is missed in more general mindfulness teachings. When Kay talks about meditation, he uses different pointers, and some seem more profound and challenging than others. A simple one is to live with what is. A more challenging one is that meditation is to be totally attentive and do nothing. To be the universe. To live out of time. To live in the unfolding of the new. Meditation is when the meditator is not. He's pointing towards a state of being which is constant in all activities throughout the day. Reading and listening to him is therefore a challenge to live in this timeless insight, which comes only by letting go of the me, the center, the doer, the controller. My own practice is therefore to live like that to the best of my ability, even though that's the wrong way to put it. This insight cannot be created by will, yet taking time to sit and rest in spacious awareness and letting everything happen on its own is helpful. Sitting can be like being a Tesla at an electric station, which is charging and then is ready to flow. So sitting helps me to live from this sense of spaciousness. Living here is very powerful. There is very good energy and the facility is perfect for studying case teachings. When I arrived here, I first read a couple of books of K. The First and Last Freedom, A Door Open for Everyone, Always Awakening, and I reread Freedom from the Known. After this reading period, I used the video projector in the library to watch Krishnamurti's most appreciated dialogues with Alan Anderson, Pupul Jayakar, and David Bohm. The way I absorb the teaching is to listen very attentively and then walk around in nature and take time to sit, abiding in awareness. And then I say, I am more of a silent person. I think there was some review and we let this at the end.
Vincent, I'm wondering, what does it do for you when you listen attentively to something and take that walk in nature? Like, what do you think is happening there? Or what does it do for you personally?
So usually I was listening just here, and this room is quite intense. So yeah, listening here, it's kind of bring you into like his state of consciousness. It's like connecting you to like what he's saying, and just you feel his energy almost by watching the video. So it kind of bring you into his insight in a way. And it's so deep that if I go get a burger after, then it would be gone. And I guess going in nature and really kind of letting what he said sit, kind of usually like there is this new state of mind when you listen attentively to what he's saying. And so yeah, walking in nature. I guess it helps really to let those deep insight that he has to reveal themselves in your own being. And there is something about nature that I don't know if I can put words, but it allows to sit in what he said. Yeah.
Do you think being in the present moment is what Kay called being attentive?
Well, in a way, we're always in the present moment.
You don't find yourself in yesterday.
But I guess the mind seems like somewhere else. So, but the perception of the present moment, I would say, is what he means by being attentive. But the perception of the present moment is quite filtered through our own conditioning. You know, even if right now I'm like ultra attentive to what is happening. You know, I can hear things and, you know, there is a question in mind and all that. But there might be way deeper reality that I'm not seeing. So could you repeat again so I really try to answer?
Sure. Do you think being in the present moment is what Kay called being attentive?
When you use the word attention, being attentive, there is this kind of choiceless quality that he will always emphasize. So you can be in the present moment and not being in a, you know, choiceless awareness. So I think this aspect of attention that he used, there is this complete effortless awareness, and so this effortless presence, I would say yes. And also, sometimes in attention, there's this sense, at least first when you hear attention, if you've never listened to any spiritual teaching and with someone say, be attentive, there might be this sense of like, so that's why I think that it's quite profound when he says, I don't know if you actually say that, but I read it on the paper here, where it says, be totally attentive and do nothing. And to me, it seems more like it's do nothing, but then attentiveness come. But you cannot, because when we say be totally attentive, it feels like, all right, I'm going to do something. But then it's like, nothing is to be done. It's like, it has to come naturally and perhaps through kind of an understanding, through inquiry, and a letting go. In the other day, I was reading the Book of Life, and there is something on passion with self-abandonment. Oh yeah, that's also something I'm reading. So passion with self-abandonment, and yeah, it seems like true attention comes from that state of being of passionate, which is like tremendous energy, but not for achieving something, which is usually where passion in our society is. It's easy to have when you want to make $1 billion, but if we tell you and becoming, then at first there might be this sense of like, all right, like, you know, no becoming, no passion, but yeah, this passion with self-abandonment, intense, natural presence. That's just words, but yeah.
And I kind of want to flip one of the questions you asked Jay to you, but how would you say your spiritual journey or your self-inquiry has changed post finding Krishnamurti's teachings? Or has it?
It did, yeah. Less attachment to formal practice. and relationships as meditation, instead of perhaps a state of mind who is in meditation wants to be silent, by itself, and how relationship is the mirror, where in meditation at some point you start having a more quiet mind, but then you come out and you have a relationship with someone, and then you're seeing that there's still a mess. um, and yeah, this end of becoming, hearing that is deep, because I don't know if it's that I'm quite young. It might be, not just that, but even in meditation, you're quite peaceful, but there's this sense I'm gonna become, the Buddha or whatever. um, that's very limiting. And I was quite into fitness, wellness, and wellness, bringing order in your life, through like healthy habits. But how, being caught in that you can also be caught in that. Like, I'm gonna be super wellness man. And seeing all the movement of the me. I guess that's one of his, that perhaps the main teacher that had so much profound understanding of the movement of thoughts, even the spiritual ambition, and a person on the spiritual path. So how the subtle movements that when I read him I can see them too. So that's quite intense, actually. Yeah. To read that. You really get exposed.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a question from the audience for both of you. Many young people don't pay attention to these types of subjects. What brought your attention to Kay's teachings?
Being unable to adjust to a profoundly sick society. Waiting to hear Kay talk without knowing what he was going to say, or just waiting forever to hear it. That sanity.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Many young people don't pay attention to these types of subjects. What brought your attention to Kay's teachings?
Well, it was first Eckhart Tolle, which was quite related, and that was by luck. I was trying to learn English, the English language. I used to be terrible, and so wanted to come to the US. I had to read books, and I bought a lot of personal development books, and I got lucky that there was The Power of Now and A New Earth. But prior, I had no attention on. I didn't know anything about like spiritual teachings. No clue. And then Kay was through his recommended book list, so it was also, I just thought Eckhart Tolle books were tremendous, and so I read, what he recommended the most, and what hooked me was when he mentioned the observer, because that's like me talking right now. So when you read, it's like yeah, like your whole life is exposed, your whole behavior, thought pattern, conditioning. And at first, when I read it, I don't think I understood super well. I was just like, what the hell? Sorry. And he has, this more like very pointy, like he put a knife on you almost. It's like you really expose yourself. It's not really like going toward pure awareness, but more understanding your petty self.
Mm.
I have one question.
Yeah. Yeah. The end. Yeah. Yeah.
The end. So no, I mean, if you both are quite a contrast in a way, right? You're Jay very much into inquiry and emotions and exploring and taking emotions as a starting point to go deeper into finding out who you are. And for you, the starting point is silence, right? And I know you in action, right? I mean, the people on YouTube or on the Zoom don't know, but I mean, you're of all the people I have met, you're the one who have spent most time in silence than any other person. It's like really, it's not just a light thing. But the question, of course, that comes up then is then, how do you deal with the emotional aspect of this? And especially, how do you prevent like spiritual bypassing? Like that things like, oh, they're just emotions, let me just sit quietly and then go, or something like that. Or so how do you build in learning about the fabric of yourself, your emotional, your inner patterns, where you're triggered, where your belief systems hit the reality and all that. How do you without what they call spiritual bypassing, putting emotions are just noise. You just have to wait till it passes, or something, or whatever, or think about. Aim for the brighter light, or something like that. Right? so that's the. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very deep question, because I can see those movements. I do a little bit of like journaling where I'm, kind of also writing down like the ego, like spiritual ambition, and want to do more like silence. So yeah, I still use a little bit of this aspect, but in terms of spiritual bypass, could you point the question so I really?
Well, my question was not really clear. I just said something. How do you prevent spiritual bypassing? Meaning that somehow, meaning spiritual bypassing, meaning that you don't really meet the actual things that are coming up in you as far as the emotions. Because the emotions, I mean, as Jay pointed out, they point us towards something you have assumed to believe, or something, a thought that you believe, and that has its psychophysiological response. And now, I don't know how much time we have left. I think we have. You might not have time to answer.
I'll do quick.
Okay, quick.
I just said no. No. If I have time, I would say that, I mean, when I see it, I can see there it's revealed, but sometimes it's actually super painful. And there has been things coming up emotionally, energetically, and it might be related to that. That's very quick exposition of these emotions that were suppressed. And in my projection of having a perfect spiritual life and how this, the marriage of it, but I'm still being caught in it. Having a perfect routine lifestyle, all this psychological demand, and this illusory trying to get somewhere. That I'm seeing more and more, because Kay is really pointing towards it, and I was probably fooling it but not paying attention to that. And perhaps it didn't seem like a big deal, but now that it seems as an illusion, maybe a lot of stuff are coming up from that. I cannot say for sure, but I don't know if that responds to bypass.
Yes,
I don't know how. It's hard to
fantastic.
respond to that,
Fantastic.
because I still have to explore that for sure.
The next will be in the next episode.
Okay.
More in the next episode. Stay tuned. Okay, I think we're